Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with a video on magic from 17-year-old Vladimir Kramnik. It's also number 5 in the series, The Pawn Rules. I'll show you a game that was played in the European Team Championships in the match Russia versus Armenia. Vladimir Kramnik was white against the Armenian Grandmaster Smebat Leputian. It was played on the 15th of November 1992. Vladimir Kramnik was an up-and-coming young grandmaster. It would be 8 years before he became world champion. He had a rating of 2590 and his opponent had a rating of 2560. Let's have a look what young Kramnik could do. He played d4 on the first move, e6, c4, knight f6 and knight f3. Not allowing the Nimzo Indian, which would come on the board after knight c3 and then bishop b4. Knight f3 is more flexible. d5, we have a queen's gambit. Knight c3, bishop e7 and bishop f4, a very flexible move, not allowing any forced variations. Leputian castled, e3 from Kramnik, c6 and queen c2. What white is doing, he's making as many useful moves as he can before playing the bishop to either e2 or d3. What he wants to do, he hopes that black will run out of moves and will have to take on c4, and then he can take with the bishop on c4 in one move and save a tempo. And that's what the next few moves are all about. Knight bd7 from Leputian. h3, a useful move. In some variations the bishop may want to go back to h2 after, for example, knight h5, which would attack that bishop. a6 from black, rook d1, another useful move, centralizing the rook. h6 and a3, still making waiting moves. And now it is black who blinks first. Rook e8 would have continued this battle, but Leputian decided it was time to take on c4, that he had run out of useful moves. Bishop takes c4, that bishop takes the pawn in one go. Knight d5 and castling. Kramnik is not worried about losing the bishop pair, he does not want to lose time moving this bishop away. Leputian took it, wins the bishop pair, e takes f4, and black will be happy with the bishop pair, but his position is a bit cramped, and he still has his bishop on c8 to get into the game. Queen c7, attacking that pawn on f4, and knight e5. That knight is very strong there. Black does not want to take on e5, then a pawn will appear on e5. He plays knight f6, and now bishop a2, improving his worst piece. That bishop was not doing too much on c4, and Kramnik is going to redeploy it to b1, where we have a very strong battery against black's king. Very nice maneuvering from the future world champion. Bishop d7, developing that bishop somewhat. Bishop b1 as planned, and bishop e8, overprotecting g6. And that can be useful in case black will have to play g7, g6 to deal with that battery on the long diagonal. But Leputian has overlooked something. White has a tactical shot, and Kramnik played it. d4, d5. What a pawn move. The pawn rules. Black can take that pawn in 3 different ways, but neither of them work. And we're going to have a look at all of them. What if we take with the c-pawn, winning a pawn? Well, not really, because there is knight takes d5 and white is winning. Queen takes c2, looks logical, but it doesn't work, because there is knight takes e7 check as an in-between move. The king will have to play, then we take the queen back, and white has won a piece. Let's take a look again. C takes d5, knight takes d5. We saw that queen takes c2 does not work. What about knight takes d5, protecting the queen? No, it doesn't work because that checkmate is still there. So taking with the c-pawn doesn't work. What about taking with the e-pawn? We get the same thing. Knight takes d5 and white wins. Black cannot recapture that piece. Knight takes doesn't work because of the checkmate, and c takes doesn't work because then the queen will be hanging. And the third way to capture is quite obvious. We can't take with the knight because of checkmate. d5, what a move. That pawn cannot be taken. Leputian saw all that. He played rook d8, attacking the pawn a fourth time, but it still cannot be taken. And Kramnik saw that and just improved another piece. Rook f2 e1. Black is still not threatening to take on d5, so white is improving his position. Wonderful play from Kramnik. 17 years old he was. Let's look. E takes d5 is still not possible because knight takes d5, rook takes d5, and rook takes d5. White is material up. The c pawn cannot take because the queen will be hanging. The knight cannot take because the checkmate is still there. So taking on d5 is not possible. King h8. And now c takes d5 is a threat as the bishop on e7 is no longer hanging with check, as we saw in that variation. So Kramnik took on e6, a pair of rooks was swapped, and Leputian took back on e6. And now Black has a weakness there. That pawn is weak. Knight e4, continuing the attack on that diagonal b1 to h7, attempting to remove the defender of the checkmate. So Black has to play g6 to avoid being checkmated. And now knight takes f6, rook takes f6. It's protecting the g6 pawn, now with two pieces. And Black still more or less stands. Taking with the bishop would be less good, because then there is knight takes g6 check with an extra pawn for white. But in this position, Kramnik changes plans. He is not taking on f6. Changing plans is something that grandmasters are very good at and weak players are very bad at. Kramnik went to c5 with the knight, changing direction. He is now attacking the weak pawn on e6. Queen c8 is a move to protect that pawn, but then there is knight takes g6 check, bishop takes, queen takes, bishop takes c5, that knight is unprotected, and there is no checkmate. But there is queen takes h6 check, king g8 and queen g5 check with a double attack, winning the piece back. King f7, queen takes c5, the dust has settled and white is 2 pawns up. Leputian did not play queen c8 to protect the pawn on e6, he took off the knight, but now his dark squares will get very weak. Queen takes back and rook g8, protecting the g6 pawn that was attacked twice. And now look at this move. Bishop back to the other diagonal, back to a2, switching the point of attack, attacking the weak pawn on e6. And Black is in dire straits. Knight d5 does not work because of bishop takes d5, e takes d5, and that pawn can just be taken because the c pawn is still pinned. The queen will fall. Another option after bishop a2 would be bishop f7. But then queen d6 is a very strong move. Attacking the queen. A move like rook c8 does not work because of knight takes f7 check, queen takes, and bishop takes e6 with a nice bishop fork, winning material. So after queen d6 you have to swap the queens. Queen takes d6. But white does not recapture the queen. He has an in-between move. Knight takes f7 check. That knight on e5 is a monster. King g7, and now we take back on d6. Take the queen back, and white has an extra piece. So what to do after bishop a2? Leputian could think of nothing better than king g7. Kramnik took the pawn. Attacking the rook. Rook stepped aside. And already we have the last move of the game. Kramnik found the very nice move. Not the only move that wins, but the strongest move in the position. Knight d7. What a move. A very nice final shot. Leputian resigned here. Let's look at one variation. If you take that knight, then rook takes d7 check. And you can take it. but there is queen e7 check. The queen is no longer covering that square. We checkmate in a few moves. King h8, check, and checkmate. What a game from Vladimir Kramnik. Wonderful positional and tactical play, and that beautiful d5 shot on the 17th move, which made me included in this The Pawn Rules series. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And a reminder that you can play in the game of myself against the Chess to Impress viewers. I played d4 on the first move, you answered knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, and I played e4 as my first move, and you can put your move, your fourth move, in the comments of this video, and then you will be in the draw, as at the end of the game I will raffle the book The Mating Game by International Master Jovanka Huska and James Essinger amongst the viewers who have taken part in this game. So let me know what you want to play on your fourth move. If you like the game of young Vladimir Kramnik, please give this video a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you like the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.